Good evening. Call to order the Medina City Schools work session. This meeting is a meeting of the Board of Education in public for the purpose of conducting the school district's business and is not to be considered a public community meeting. There is a time for public participation during the meeting as indicated in the agenda. If you'll all rise for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Mr. Chambers, if you'll call roll call.
Mr. Hilberg. Here. Ms. Parkhurst. Here. Mr. Ross. Here. Mr. Skidmore. Ms. Pavlik.
Here. Are there any additions, removals, modifications to the agenda? Hearing none, I'll make a motion to approve the agenda.
Second.
Mr. Chambers?
Ms. Pavlik.
Aye.
Mr. Ross.
Aye.
Mr. Hilberg.
Aye.
Ms. Parkhurst.
Aye.
Thank you.
At this time, I will turn it over to Mr. Sable.
I'd like to first say that we've had a successful return of our students to our buildings. We did the soft start last week, which I think was vitally important in working with our students to help them adjust to the new rules and regulations that need to be in place for safety reasons. I spent a lot of time visiting classrooms and visiting the buildings last week. And it really was a happy week. And I think we all could use some happy time with what we've all been going through with the COVID and the pandemic. But it was really refreshing to visit the buildings and see our teachers working with our students again, see our cafeteria employees serving food to our students and interacting with them. I was impressed with the job that our staff and especially our students did in making the adjustments. I was even in kindergarten classrooms, and the kindergartners, at least while I was in there, didn't seem to have any problems with the mask, and they were happy to be in school, excited to be back, and were working. I visited high school classes, and typically I always bounce around and visit classrooms when students first return, and typically when students return from the summer, especially at the upper grades, you get some grunts and grumbles, and there was none of that. I mean, the students were just so excited to be back in the classrooms and working directly with their teachers and able to see their peers. Friday was our first full day with all of our students in grades K through 8. Today, second day. Tomorrow I am going to be meeting with the principals to get individual building updates on how things are going. But the feedback thus far has been fairly positive. So it's amazing how quickly we can get right back into the groove after having that long period of time of online and alternate instruction. One thing I do want to, or a couple things that I would like to address tonight, and the first is the high school hybrid schedule. And I know I've talked about that here before, but I've gotten several parent questions, so I thought it would be a good idea to bring it up tonight for the board as well as the community. Our goal at the high school is to move to have students 5 days a week. Our plan and our hope is that this is a temporary situation with the hybrid schedule. In bringing our high school students back, we want to make sure it's done in the safest means possible. It really helps us, or is helping us, to have our students back in the building in order to explore ways to look around some challenges we have. I've previously discussed probably our biggest challenge is our lunch periods. And I know we look at other area high schools, and their high schools are in session 5 days a week. One of the reasons why districts were given authority on an individual basis to select their plans is because we have different enrollment sizes, different buildings, different building capacities. Some high schools are much smaller than ours. Others have more space within them to spread students out. We're pretty limited in the high school in regards to where students can go. And with lunch periods, students have to be social distanced 6 feet. So we're utilizing the 3 feet with masks throughout the rest of the building. Lunch is different because they're taking their masks off. I do want to make sure that our families know that this is something we're working on. We're exploring multiple options in order to spread our students out. As a matter of fact, even with half our students back in the hybrid model, we've still added extra tables and spreaded them out around the PAC area in order to ensure social distancing. So we are exploring alternative locations to put our students for lunch, such as the gym, the balconies in the gym, any other free spaces. We've talked about the rec center, the media center. We're not yet prepared to make decisions on those, but with only a week into it, I think it's important to note that we are working on it. Right now, our biggest obstacle is we think we can space people out. It's supervision that's a concern. We estimate that in order to supervise students split up around the building at lunch, it would take approximately 12 to 15 extra personnel during lunchtime. Typically, we have teachers on duty or aides that work to cover the cafeteria. Obviously, we can't spread our people that far. We don't have enough people. We are discussing various options. I know I've had several parents reach out to me about volunteering and that they'd be willing to volunteer for the districts if it helps get their children back into school. That's something we don't know if we're going to be able to do, but we are looking at the possibility of having parents volunteer to help cover high school lunches. In addition, we are looking at the possibility of some additional aides to help us within the cafeterias. That is a challenge because there's already an aide shortage, a paraprofessional shortage. What's hard about filling those lunchtime periods is they're 2-3 hour positions. So in the middle of the day. So it often takes somebody with a unique schedule or retired or a stay at home to be able to come in and cover those periods. The hallways is another concern, and it's just a lot of students passing in the hallways at a single time, 2,200 students. I am confident, though, that that's something we can work through. Even though students will be closer together during those hall exchanges, what the health department has shared with us is the important thing is that students keep moving. So as long as they leave their class, go directly to their next class, which is the reason why they don't have locker access, so they're not standing still in the hallway or grouping together, then that should not be a problem as long as they're wearing their masks, which hasn't been an issue at the high school thus far. The third problem was, or challenge was study halls and cleaning the study halls in between periods. We will have study halls with up to 300 students, and that's something that we are still working on. When you have that many people, students socially distanced, say if we use the PAC, that facility still needs to be cleaned before the next group of students come in. The best way to do that is probably with our electrostatic misters. The issue is that has to settle for a period of time before a new group of people can come in. But the more I've talked to Dr. Kwolek, and she is working with a committee here at the high school, which includes classified and certified staff, that we're going to get a resolution. My own personal timeline, it's important to emphasize that because I don't sit directly on this committee, but my own personal timeline is that we're looking at November to try and get our students back 5 days a week. Now, of course, there's some unforeseen circumstances that could come up during that time period in regards to COVID. Fortunately, right now as a county, we're in a very good position as yellow, and I'm hoping that we're able to stay that way. And I know our community has worked hard to get us in that position because we've gone down to yellow at a time period when a lot of states in the country are increasing in rates. So kudos to Medina County and the work that everybody has done. So we continue to work through these odd times. Our students are extraordinarily resilient. Our staff are as well, and I have full confidence that we are going to keep our students up in terms of academics, in terms of how they perform academically. The other thing I wanted to bring up in terms of an update on return to school, and I know parents have already been notified, but we will have state testing occurring this school year. And I wanted to provide some clarification because the third grade guarantee is actually this fall. And we've had some parents with some concern in regards to their children taking those tests and questioning why we're doing those tests during this pandemic time, especially when they were canceled last spring. And the answer to that is that it is a federal mandate. The federal government has mandated, last spring they waived the tests, this year they did not waive the tests, and states risk losing federal funding if the tests aren't administered. So we will be testing all of our students with the state tests. There may be a few of those that we don't have to do in the spring, depending on the decisions the state makes. We do test more than is required by the federal government in Ohio. So there is the possibility that the state could decrease those tests to the federal minimum. But we will be testing our students both on MODA as well as our students that have returned to school. Those tests will be administered within our buildings. We are not permitted to administer them digitally or at home. So our curriculum department has been working to develop a system to safely have our MODA students come in for testing period, and I anticipate that our MODA students and our students that are here in-house will probably be testing on different dates so we can ensure that there's social distancing that's occurring. The next topic is SOAR and Portrait of a Graduate, and I'm going to turn it over to Tina here in a little bit after I say a couple things. I do want to say that I am actually excited that we're talking about this tonight because this is getting back to initiatives we worked very hard on last year and came to a screeching halt in the spring with COVID-19. One of the things I know I've been preaching is that we are going to continue with our initiatives. It might be a different pace, it might be a little bit different direction, but it's important that we continue to move Medina City Schools forward, and that's what we're working on doing. In regards to SOAR, that is curricular work we've been doing at the state level with Battelle for Kids. We work with districts around the state, and I was even through this program over the summer, I've been able to interact with districts around the country in dealing with the COVID challenges. And SOAR has to do with our transition to 21st century learning and teaching. The second piece of that is Portrait of a Graduate, which we actually got into the very initial steps last year, beginning this process before it was stopped. And this is developing the expectations for all Medina students upon graduation. These expectations or these goals basically would be replaces the district mission statement, because the mission statement is these qualities that we want to see in our students. The thing I like about a portrait is it's much more applicable than a mission statement, and there will be specific strategies around it at every grade level in order to ensure that those attributes are part of the instruction that's happening at each grade level. The other piece that's not on here that actually came up late last week that I would also like to tie into this process is looking at our, I'm losing my mind. Thank you. Looking at our strategic plan. We're actually around that time where we need to start looking and addressing the strategic plan again. Next year is the 5th year of the strategic plan. We have been providing regular updates, annual updates. We didn't do that this year because of COVID, but we have been providing annual updates on our progress with our current strategic plan. And we have met most of the components to that strategic plan. So wrapping it up a year early and moving on to the next strategic plan, I think the timing is perfect because it allows us to coordinate it with the Portrait of the Graduate, as well as the work that we're doing with 21st century learning and teaching in SOAR. In addition to that, and I think this is the part we really found exciting, is it gives us a clean step going into next year and put all this COVID stuff behind us with a new, and I think it'll be an exciting direction with the district because with this strategic planning process, I anticipate that we've done a lot of work the last 5 years in regards to bringing the district back. Everybody knows the district went through a difficult time. The next stage for the next strategic plan is really moving us forward. So I think we're going to have some exciting conversations as part of that process. And I'm sorry, Tina, I'm probably stealing all your thunder. But we do want to make sure that's a collaborative process. And I have talked to some other districts who have actually moved forward with initiatives such as these. And they did it through virtual meetings with a lot of success. I specifically talked to the superintendent of Columbus City Schools, and she had shared with me that they actually had a much higher parent involvement because they did it digitally, just because it was easier for parents to just log on and be a part of the conversation. We are still working with the impact group in terms of the portrait. We met with them last week and talked to them about the potential of tying in the strategic plan, and I did ask them to provide me with a quote or an idea of what additional costs would be involved with that. And I don't have that to share with the board tonight because that just happened at the end of last week. But as soon as we have that, I will share it with the board. So Tina, at this time, I'll turn it over to you.
Okay, thank you. So as Aaron said, we're very excited to begin thinking about our Portrait of a Graduate again. We started meeting with SOAR earlier this summer, and it's just nice to have those conversations about visioning and forward thinking. So we're excited to bring that back to the district. And I know I've had some informal conversations with some of our principals and some of our teaching staff, and everybody's excited to talk about this again. So I think this is going to be a very positive step forward for our district, something that will help us again bring us out of this COVID and into our next steps. So I just wanted to review with the board what is a Portrait of a Graduate, because it has been probably 7 to 8 months since we've talked about it. Portrait of a Graduate provides the direction for us. It answers the questions: what are our hopes and dreams for our students? What hopes and dreams do our community have for our students? What are the skills and habits of mind that they need for success? And then, most importantly, what are the implications for learning experiences? Because that is going to be the biggest piece of our portrait work, is once we pick those skills and habits of mind, how are we going to then have instill those into our students? So we did a lot of work with SOAR last year, just kind of learning about 21st century skills, things that kids need, and they shared with us this Future of Jobs report, the top skills in 2020. So in addition to, of course, English skills and math skills and science and social studies skills, these are the kinds of things that businesses are looking for as they go to hire our students. So as we go into the Portrait of a Graduate, what we'll have the community do, or our committee do, is pick what we think are important for our students, and then that will be put into a graphic like this that, as Erin said, would replace all of our other mission plans or essential practices. This would drive everything that we do. So here are some examples from Talmadge. On the next slide, there's like an example from Dublin, I think. So those are just some examples of what it could look like. So our journey through this, where we started was the WAIT team. Cindy Grice and a few of her teachers actually started at an Innovative Leaders Institute, where they went around the state, and they visited schools that had already begun this work, and they came back so excited, and so that has been a big push for us. This year, we actually have a Canavan team that are going through that same process, although they won't be going to visit those schools because of everything that's going on. They're having virtual meetings, and they're seeing the same kinds of things and having those same kinds of discussions that Cindy and her team found so enriching. This is our year 2 to be in SOAR, and this is our SOAR team right now. Our original plan was to add people to the team this year. We weren't able to do that, of course, because just of how everything is going, but we hope that our next step would be to expand our team to include some of our teacher leaders. So what do we want for the Medina City Schools, and what will the portrait give us is a shared vision around 21st century learning, a sense of community where we're all working together to meet those goals. We want forward thinkers. We want to expose students to experiences where they can find their passion, and to reinvigorate staff and enthusiasm in students. And how do we get there? Again, our Portrait of a Graduate. We believe that our Portrait of a Graduate is going to be the vehicle to help us reach our goals. It's going to drive our strategic plan. It's going to drive all of our curriculum adoptions, and it will just drive how we do things, how things go in our district. So our timeline right now, what we plan to do is, again, it's been 8 months or so since we've had these conversations. So we want to start reorienting our staff to this work, talking to our staff about Portrait of a Graduate and the process, getting their input from now until January. In January, as Erin said, the impact group will be getting in touch with us and setting up committees, virtual committees of staff, parents, community members, board members, administrators, to have and they'll be part of our Portrait of a Graduate committee, and they will help us come up with our habits of mind and skills that we want our students to have. And after that, once we're done with our Portrait of a Graduate, our next conversation, which they will also help us lead, would be our strategic plan. So what will we do then as a district to help us move our students in that direction? So we are anticipating by the end of May, we're hoping that we would have not only our portrait done, but also a strategic plan done that we would then bring to you in either June or July for approval, and then we, as Erin said, we would be able to start a brand new school year with a new strategic plan, new Portrait of a Graduate, and renewed energy. So we're really excited. Is there any questions about that process?
Tina, what do you anticipate the community meetings? Do you think they'll be in person? Will they be virtual?
Right now, we're looking at virtual meetings,
Okay.
But as Erin said, we're kind of excited about that because we think more people will join. So
Okay.
we'll probably get a good number of parents and a lot more input that way.
Okay, thank you.
Seems like, so you want to have the strategic plan done by May? Is that what you said, May or June?
That's what we're.
Is that,
Yeah,
okay.
too fast, is that what
You think that's pushing it? Because if you remember, when we did the one 5 years ago, it took us almost the whole year.
Yep, I don't think that's pushing it, as long as we're working with the impact group. We did it all internally last time.
We did, yes.
And I think it's important that we work with an outside agency in doing our strategic plan moving forward. There are third-party, they'll provide third-party surveys and feedback so that parents, I hope to think they feel comfortable talking to us as it is, but it provides a cushion for them so they're not directly dealing with us when they're providing their feedback. It works through the impact group, and then the impact group works with us to provide that information. The other piece is this is a big part of what the impact group does. Hudson, we're actually following a model that Hudson utilized a few years ago, where they paired their strategic plan and their portrait of a graduate together. So we think it's actually going to be better and easier on the community because instead of having two processes, we're going to work with the impact group of combining these into one process. So we're not reaching out to our parents again next year or at another time to pull them in for this process. We still do intend to get all the feedback, just like we did the last time, including the parent, staff, student groups. So I think you're going to see that it's still a similar process, but it's an outside perspective. And I think that's especially important to me as we're looking at things for moving forward, not just bringing things back.
Thank you.
The other thing I wanted to mention about SOAR, and SOAR is one of the programs at the beginning of the year that we talked about not participating in this coming year as we were looking at budgetary cuts. Last year, our SOAR contract was somewhere around $25,000 to $28,000. Tina and I have worked with Battelle for Kids, and of course, we're not the only district within this consortium that's dealing with the COVID as well as financial cuts. But we've been very fortunate for them to work with us, and a cost to participate this year would be approximately $8,000, so that's significantly less. The programming will look different. Obviously, you get what you pay for, but the importance of still being involved in that programming is so important. And my hope is to present that SOAR contract to the board at our next regular meeting later this month.
This is really exciting because I know back in February, I felt like we had a lot of momentum going, and I was really excited about, the direction we were going and moving forward, and we had to just slam on the brakes and press pause. So it is really exciting to hear this and to get things started back up again. So thank you for your work in doing that.
Well, and the next step in this piece is I know we're going to be meeting with the curriculum committee where we have community members on that in the next few weeks prior to the board meeting. So we want to have some discussion with that group before we even present the contract to the board.
Tina, what was I? As far as other districts in the county, are we the only district doing portrait, or are there any other school districts?
I believe we're the first district in Medina to do the portrait of a
Okay.
graduate, but there are other districts very close to us that have done it, like Aaron said, Hudson, Olmsted Falls.
Yeah.
We're not alone in doing portrait, but I think we are the first in the county.
Hudson, like comparable to our size and all that?
Hudson's a little smaller, but there are other districts much bigger that have done it too, like Columbus City. So
Yeah.
districts of all sizes have done portrait of a graduate.
Yep, and Hudson's a smaller district. They're a high-performing district like we are. So in that sense, I think it's a good comparison. Our closest neighbors, Strongsville, they're actually in our cohort with us. So they're working through this process as well. Next thing, and I don't intend to spend too much time on this, but I wanted to bring this up because I've been doing my superintendent lunches on a weekly basis, which they've had great turnout. We've had great conversation, really positive feedback from the people who have participated. Just be able to talk and get answers to their questions. I know sometimes it's hard to pull answers from all the communications we send out written, especially when we've been dealing with a moving target since this whole COVID thing has started. But redistricting and facilities has been a topic that people have asked me about. We still do need to redistrict, so that has not gone away. What the redistricting is going to look like, I really don't know, but we need to balance our numbers down at the elementary buildings. One thing we have done is we've delayed that process. And we are going to, I don't have a date yet, but we are going to delay that out as much as we can to get through the COVID situation. Knowing the kind of change that our students and our staff have already been through this COVID era, timing-wise, and throwing another major change like redistricting in is not what I want to do if we can avoid it. We are going to need to look at our numbers, though, as we head into the end of the school year, and we will start to generate some timelines in regards to the redistricting. The other piece to the redistricting is facilities, and we've been having conversations about either facelifting or replacing potentially some of our facilities. We actually completed a big study last year that looked at the state of the facilities and ones that were recommended by the state for replacement or for overhaul. Again, with the economy, it's important that we're sensitive to what's going on in our community. I'm very hesitant. Originally, we had it planned that we were going to be going out for a bond this coming spring. I don't anticipate recommending that to the board. I don't think from my conversations with parents that the community is ready to move in that direction right now. I would like to, down the road, have further conversation with the board in regards to when that might be appropriate. We do have an operating levy that we're going to need to put on the ballot in 3 years, 4 years, somewhere within that time frame. So that might be a good time to start talking about the potential of a bond as well. A concern I have is watching our neighbors to the north in Brunswick. They've got a beautiful middle school, and I know they're struggling now to be able to finance everything that goes around having that middle school. And if we're going to do something with facilities, I want to make sure that we've got the supports around us to make sure it's going to be a success. I think this was another thing that was just totally frozen once COVID hit. I think we had actually had our first community meeting days before COVID occurred and the schools closed. So we will be reactivating that. I don't foresee that happening until next school year, though, before we really start having those conversations again. Parent, staff, and student survey results. I know many of our parents know because we had approximately 1,000 responses that we send out surveys to our students, our staff, and our parents in regards to Online 2.0 as well as MODA. I want to share those results with the board this evening, and we're going to put those survey results or a summary up on the website as well in the coming week or so. So I'm going to turn it back to Tina.
Okay, and then just to reiterate, we want to thank everybody for filling out the survey. There were actually 2,000 responses, so we really had a lot of parents respond, and we really appreciate it. And we do look at it and try to use the information that we get from our survey. As we did in the spring, we are planning to use this information in case we ever did need to go back to online, which we don't want to, but if we ever had to, we want to make sure that we're making some changes now in the events, just so that we're prepared. And also for elementary MODA students that are following the same schedule, where we want to make sure that we're taking this feedback into consideration and making those changes now so that we don't have to wait till January. So I'm just going to run really quickly through the survey results with you. Our first section of the survey is secondary feedback. This is online 2.0 feedback. We had 75% of our respondents, almost 1,000 respondents just in the survey alone. 75% were parents, 25% were students. One of the questions that we asked were, do you feel that there has been an appropriate amount of live sessions? And as you can see, 75% of our students thought there were an appropriate amount of live sessions. We had about 3%, I think, that said no, and about 18% said no, and 3% said not sure. Parents, on the other hand, if you go to the next slide, we had about 48% of our parents say yes, that they did feel that there was an appropriate amount of live sessions at the secondary level, and 43% said no, that there weren't. So the next slide is, do you feel that the curriculum is providing the appropriate amount of work? You could see that 50% of our students thought yes, it does provide the appropriate amount of work. 47% of our students thought that the work that they were given was overwhelming to them. We had about 3% of our students say, answer other. Parents, on the other hand, 51% of them felt like it was the appropriate amount of work. About 28% felt like it was overwhelming, and around 19% felt like there was not enough. Do you feel that communication from the district provided clarity on programming and expectations? 52% said yes. 32% said somewhat, and about 13% said no. I'm sorry. Every time I didn't bring my glasses. Do you feel that communication from the district has provided clarity on programming? This is parents, the parent answers. 54% said yes, 29% said somewhat, and the rest of the parents felt like no, that it wasn't. I feel that my child has had the appropriate amount of support from their teachers. This is the students answering. Is that 60%? Thank you. 60%, 29% somewhat, and about 9% said no. Parents were very similar on that end. Highest frequency comments. Again, there were 1,000 people that responded to this survey alone, but the highest frequency comments were, we appreciate everything that everyone's trying to do in this difficult time. So they realize that these aren't, best case circumstances, and we appreciate that. A lot of parents felt that there was not enough synchronous learning opportunities, and they said so in the chart, and they also said so in their comments. Emails not answered in a timely fashion was something that came up frequently. Too much communication, and this kind of centered around Google Classroom. Google Classroom, when teachers post new things, students get emails every time something new gets posted. So that's something that we can easily fix with a video on how students can turn those notifications off. And so we appreciate that feedback, and we'll make sure that we get that video out. District communication, there was a lot of comments that centered around that. It was either too much or not clear or too late, so that's something that we need to work on. Teacher assignments posted and due at different times. That was hard for parents to manage, so we want to make sure that when we're looking at revamping our 2.0 that we make sure that we make it more regular for parents so that they know what to expect, parents and kids. Parents and kids are worried that that they'll be behind. They want the high school to return to 5 days a week was a big comment. And it's important for you guys to know that this survey was sent out before we returned in a hybrid model, or before we returned face-to-face at all. So we were still in online 2.0 when this survey went out. Hard to tell how students were doing. Parents were unsure where to find grades, and they felt there were inconsistencies between classrooms and how instruction and assignments were delivered. And I think that's probably true in regular school too, that there are differences in the way teachers handle things. MODA is...
Tina,
oh, yeah.
I'm sorry, before you go on to MODA.
Sure.
Do you have the breakdown for elementary, middle school versus high school? Or mainly, I'm curious for those comments. Were those highest frequency for all three levels, or just?
That was just high school.
Just high school. Okay,
Yeah.
thank you.
I'm sorry, that was high school and middle school.
Thank you.
Online 2.0 only, not MODA. Yeah. So that's kind of how I broke up this presentation into pieces like that. So our next section is secondary feedback, which is grades 6 through 12, MODA only. So how would you describe your students' overall experience with MODA? Overall, 16% felt it's excellent, 52% felt it was satisfactory, about 24% felt it was fair, and 7% felt it was poor. Do you feel your student is progressing through the material satisfactorily? 70% said yes, 17% said not sure, and 13% said no. Do you feel that the curriculum is providing the appropriate amount of work? 64% said yes, 26% said not sure, and 10% said no. Do you feel that communication from the district has provided clarity on programming and expectations? 46% said yes, 36% said somewhat, and 18% said no. The highest frequency comments from secondary MODA were, we appreciate the opportunity. Parents were grateful that we had an online opportunity available to them. They did feel that there was not enough teacher interaction. That was something that, a comment that came up over and over again. They liked the model that we had for elementary, and they wished that we had something like that for secondary. Slow response on questions. Resetting tests can be frustrating. So some of these things we are already working on. Resetting tests is one of them. We are watching the tests that are being reset to make sure that if kids have, so how MODA works at the secondary level is if students don't pass the test with a 70%, then they get another chance. If they don't pass again, the test gets locked. And so that's one of the things that we've been trying to monitor for students who have frequently locked sessions. They need their tests reset so they can take it one last time. And we have been trying to intervene at those times. So there have been a little, or sometimes a pause where the tests aren't reset right away. And that's because we are providing tutorials for kids, or we're trying to match kids up with some of our consulting teachers. So that is probably one of the reasons that they felt like resetting tests and having to wait is a little frustrating. Not sure how much progress is adequate progress. I know that Matt at the middle school and Joe at the high school have been sending weekly communication out to parents, giving them indications about exactly where we should be in the curriculum every week, what percentage of the coursework should be completed, so we're hoping that that helps. Concerned about the transition back, will students be prepared? And I think we saw that same comment with online 2.0. Lots of information coming through, which is confusing, and then not enough information coming through. So we got comments on both sides there. And then some students feel isolated because, it is self-paced and self-directed, so. Our next section, elementary feedback, we did group this together. We put MODA together and 2.0 together because the programs were the same. So if you see it on the top left-hand side, this is the MODA. So did MODA parents feel that there has been an appropriate amount of live sessions? 72% said yes, 15% no, said no, and then there was an other category, so there was a, you know, a variety of answers in that other category. For Online 2.0, did you feel that there was an appropriate amount of live sessions? 71% said yes, 18% said no, and then there was a lot of variation again. You're going to find that a lot of MODA and Online 2.0, the statistics are exactly the same, but it makes sense because the program was. Do you feel that the curriculum is providing the appropriate amount of work? 67% said it seemed like the right amount of work. 20% of MODA parents felt that there has not been enough work at the elementary level, and 11% felt it was overwhelming to kids. In Online 2.0, it was very similar, except it was switched. I think there was more parents that felt it was overwhelming than that there wasn't enough. Do you feel that communication from the district has provided clarity on programming and expectations? 65% said yes, 16% said somewhat, and 17% said no of MODA. Online, it was 64% yes, 27% somewhat, and 8% said no. Has communication from your child's teacher helped prepare your child for the week? 83% of MODA parents said yes, 10% said no. Online 2.0, 87% said yes, and only 5% said no, and 0.5% said somewhat. Highest frequency comments from elementary is we love our teachers and we appreciate what they are doing. The second highest comment was we want to know the transition plan for January. We need enough time to plan. And we are working and starting to talk about that. Online learning is hard. We want to be back in school was a frequent comment. Online learning is hard on parents, especially working parents with differing schedules. We are unsure where to find grades was another comment. And that is probably a change because grades are posted in Google Classroom. So that's something that we can help parents with. Schedule is difficult to follow, would like things all in one place, and I think that refers to Google Classroom. We tried to streamline Google Classroom, but we see that we have some more work to do there, so we're going to be meeting with our elementary committee starting tomorrow to try to put some changes in place that will make that easier. We would like more flexibility with assignments, hard when they are all posted on the same day. Last year in the spring, we had comments from parents that said that posting it all on Monday was overwhelming and they wanted it meted out a little bit. So we posted them every day instead of posting them all on Monday, but then parents didn't like that because there wasn't enough flexibility. So I think what we're going to try to do is maybe post some on Monday, some on Wednesday, so it's a little bit of both. It's meted out, but there is still some flexibility for parents who want to work on different days. We've had some technology issues, problems with usernames and passwords, or if teachers are using apps parents are unfamiliar with. So those are the kinds of things that we have been working really hard to fix. And communication has not been timely, too much, or unclear. So, and that is, and again, we are trying to address those problems, and we have a committee together already, meeting tomorrow. Does anybody have any questions about that?
Tina, with MODA, we didn't do it ourselves, right? We use Apex
At the secondary level, that's correct.
at the secondary. Are you happy with how that worked out, or would we change that based on the comments? What do you think?
Right. So right now, we are in Apex, and we'll be in Apex for the rest of our time online 2.0. That we do MODA, but we can make some things better, and so that's what we're trying to do. We're trying to be responsive to parents' questions and concerns. Yeah. Has it worked out perfectly? No, but I don't think any online curriculum works out perfectly.
Okay, thanks.
I know we did follow up, and there are 30 other districts around from Columbus and north that also use Apex. So we're not the only ones using Apex. And I've talked to other districts around us who are using other products that also are having trouble. I think online learning, it produces struggles, and I think it's just not ideal in all cases. It's never perfect, I guess, is what I'm trying to say.
No, I just mention it because a lot of credit to you all for, you had a week, I guess, in March to put something together, and then, we improved on it for the start of this year. So a lot of credit to you guys. That's all. I'm just curious how you thought.
Yeah.
Thank you.
No, but I think that's a good point, Mr. Ross, and kind of leads into what I was going to say, is the overwhelming feedback I've gotten when I've talked to parents is it's definitely better than what was going on in the spring. As Tina said, we know we still have areas where we can and will improve. Obviously, with MODA, it's ongoing. In terms of the online 2.0, we want to be prepared in the event that our students do have to go back online, whether it's as a district or as a building or even as a grade level. We can't predict that, so we want to continue to get that feedback and make adjustments so we continue to make it better. Next up, just some regular business, use of school facilities rental program guide and the labor rates. For outside organizations, we do charge a fee in order to utilize our facilities. That fee has not been updated since 2012. Mr. Magnaca had mentioned at the last meeting that he is filling in as our substitute business director, and we've asked him to work with Mr. Shields in reviewing those rates. They do need to be updated, as you can imagine. Labor and personnel costs in terms of custodial or even setting up an area have increased over the course of the last 8 years. So at our next regular meeting, I would like to recommend to the board an increase to those rates. And I also intend to have this something that we regularly reevaluate, maybe every 2, 3, 4 years as costs increase. And Jim, do you have the number of increase that we're talking about?
I believe the recommendation Joe had was from $38 an hour to around $43 an hour.
Yeah, that sounds about right.
Yeah.
Yep.
And that includes wages and fringe benefits and snow plowing, and just all the things that go into it when we have no custodian here for us.
So again, that would be on the regular October meeting as an agenda item. And
Mr.
I'm
Sable,
sorry.
what kind of organizations typically rent our buildings?
Churches, dance crews, outside clubs, community organizations. So yeah, there's really a variety. We have not had it this year because of COVID, because we've limited outsiders coming in and using our facilities. But we typically have rentals on a weekly basis.
Aaron, does that include the rec center? Does the city have their own system?
No, it does not include the rec center.
Okay.
Yeah, the city operates rentals out of the recreation center.
Okay.
Mr. Sable, that does include the Performing Arts Center, though, correct?
It does.
Thank you.
Last item I have, and before I get into the board meeting format, I wanted to mention one more COVID thing that I actually meant to mention at the top of the meeting. Now that we have students return to school, as well as all of our staff, we have expected that we'd start seeing some COVID cases in the district. It's unavoidable. From our surrounding districts who have been in session for longer than us, they have regularly seen COVID cases. I know I talked at a previous meeting as to how we were going to handle that communication with our parents, and we did have a few cases come up already. In terms of the communication, it's a very sensitive topic in regards to communicating to staff and parents, and that's because we have to do what we can to protect the individual who might be ill and make sure that we're following HIPAA. In regards to who we're communicating to and how we're communicating, that actually was not our decision. Other than writing the letter. That was actually an order coming out of Columbus from the governor, and that order came out probably about 4 weeks ago. So the way the communication works is obviously we're in immediate contact with the health department or Medina Health Department if there is a case. We are working directly with the health department in terms of making decisions regarding who gets notified because they're at risk of being infected and would need to quarantine and or be tested. And those are actually decisions that the health department makes. When we contact them, they have a protocol that they follow. Obviously, there's information that we provide them in terms of tracing. And then they make the decisions in regards to who needs to go into quarantine or who needs to be contacted, not us. With communicating, we have 3 forms of communication that we're utilizing. And again, these are ordered by the state, by the governor. The first is that notification to each family who has a child within the classroom with the student and or staff member receives a separate notification, just that it was an individual in their class, or in the high school's case, it would be one of your classes. We won't specify at the upper level the specific class. Again, that's for the protection of the staff member or the student who may be ill. The second form of communication is a more generic communication that goes out to the whole building. So for instance, if we have a case at Garfield, then we would notify everybody in the building that there was a case at Garfield. We will not notify the entire district, just individual buildings. We do, however, have a live counter on our website on the COVID page that indicates the amount of cases that are currently in the district. If people are curious as to potential cases within the district, that counter currently has 2 staff members and 1 student. And again, I can't say enough how much we need to protect the individuals who are going through this illness. The other piece, and I have already with communications received several emails from parents, is that the health department will directly contact families if there is a concern about quarantining. And with both instances that we recently communicated about, the health department has already reached out to individuals who needed to be contacted. So if you receive that letter and you haven't heard anything, that means that the health department hasn't determined that your child or that a specific staff member was at any risk of the COVID transfer. And I just wanted to bring that up because I am getting some questions about, well, we're in the building, and those are things that we can't share. But to make people feel more comfortable, you will hear from the health department if there's a concern. And the last thing I have is board meeting formats. I can tell you we are anxious to get back to some more normal board meeting formats and get some community members and the media's faces back in here. We were actually hoping to be able to start that return to more normal and have people back in at our regular meeting. However, we actually had a meeting in the district to start planning that out, and then the next day I was on a conference with the health director, and that's something multiple superintendents brought up, and we have been asked not to return board meetings yet to normal. They didn't just include board meetings, they included government meetings, things like that. And the current advice is that we utilize technology as much as we possibly can to help with social distancing. The other piece to that is there's still an order in place with a limitation of 10 people. That is something that we've gotten word that they're going to pull back on, but they haven't done it yet. So that's one of the things that we're waiting on. So I will continue to keep the board informed. I did want you to know that we are working on this, and I want the community to know that as well. I know it doesn't always make a lot of sense that we have all our students back, but we can't have people in for a board meeting. But I do remind that that is bringing outside people within the facilities, which is something that we've tried to avoid doing. So I am hopeful in the next few months we will be able to get back to more normal of a board meeting. It won't be exactly like it was. There will still need to be social distancing within the room, just like we're doing here for any potential audience, but we are working on it.
Mr. Sable, and just to clarify as well, that limit of 10 people, that's per the governor's order, correct?
That is governor and CDC order, and that documentation would actually have to be changed. That's the big thing we're waiting on.
Thank you.
And I know part of the reason why it's confusing is because the way the government has handled it is as separate entities. So you look at government meetings, and that's handled in one set of COVID documentation. Then you look at schools, and that's handled in a different section of documentation. You look at businesses, and that's its own separate parameters and documentation. And the reality is that a lot of these areas overlap. So it creates weird situations like being able to have kids in the building but not be able to have a board meeting, or to be able to have a restaurant open with social distancing but not be able to have a board meeting. So it's everybody's first pandemic, including the government's. So we're working through it, and I do regularly communicate at the state level. I actually have a meeting tomorrow morning with our local representatives, and then meet with the Alliance with state representatives. And we do have some action items for tonight. These are items that we typically don't have this time of year, and the reason why they're later coming through is because of COVID. We wanted to make sure that we were going to have the opportunity to actually move forward with these clubs and organizations before we implemented the co-curricular contracts. I do want to thank our advisors and our teachers who have already, without the contracts in place, put a lot of work in to make sure that all of these programs have continued to move forward for our students. We do feel confident that we will have these programs in place, if not in a traditional capacity, in some sort of a capacity. So I'd like to recommend to the board this evening the following co-curricular appointments pending completion of all appropriate documentation, including background checks to our Human Resources Department. And the last thing that I wanted to point out here in this section is we do have a upcoming retirement on here for Susan Wright, and I'm actually going to turn it over to Mr. Chambers because she works with Dave within the Treasurer's office.
Yes, I'd just like to say a few words about Susan. Susan Wright is retiring from Medina City Schools with 19 years of service to the district. She began as a computer operator in student registration, and then soon after moved to the Treasurer's office as an office secretary and then a financial secretary. In the Treasurer's office, Susan most recently has been handling accounts payable for the district. She looks forward to spending time with her children and her grandchildren in retirement, continuing her involvement as the director of the Medina County Fair. We wish Susan well in retirement and thank her for her years of service in the district as an employee and a longtime parent volunteer. Thank you, Susan.
Make a motion, we approve the superintendent's action item?
Second.
I have one question.
As do I, but go ahead, Mr. Ross.
Aaron, when it says student supervision, is that something we've always had, or is that just because of COVID?
That's something that we have always had. That could be playground supervision, cafeteria supervision.
Okay. Thank you.
Aaron, under the middle schools, I see that there is middle school music director listed multiple times with different names. It's easy to understand where it's middle school jazz ensemble director versus middle school music director, but how many music directors do we have at the middle schools, and why?
I would actually need to turn to Mr. Shields.
The one that's on here is one that's issued, but there's different things that they do. There's concerts that are extra and over and above. There's ensemble groups that they do. But there's generally one music director per music teacher. And Tina knows too, because Tina deals with the
Well,
music.
in addition, oh, I'm sorry.
It's band, orchestra, and choir, I believe. So there's a director for band, there's a director for orchestra, there's a director for choir.
That's all I was going to say. For example, I know that Beth Beta is for choir and Margaret Blasco is for band.
Okay, all right. Would it be better if those were more specific, those titles, or is it a reason that it's grouped like generically like that?
It's per the wording within the negotiated agreement. So that is something we could discuss to separate those out with our teachers association.
Any other questions?
And I just had a brief question. I know the high school band has been playing outside, so we were able to work out a way for choir and band to practice indoors?
It is still in process. We do have direction finally from the state in terms of those performing groups. I can tell you I stopped over in Claggett in choir where they were rehearsing, and they were really spread out in the room. Everybody had their masks on. So there are specific parameters that we have to follow. I know it includes a 6 or more foot distancing. But we are having discussions about utilizing the PAC for practices because we can space students more out in there than we can within the classrooms. And recently we've been talking about performances, and I actually had a conversation with county superintendents last week about this and how districts are taking the approach for these concerts. So it could be something similar to what we've done with athletics, where there's a very limited amount of people that are permitted to attend and they're socially distanced. The other way it could be is that the students perform virtually. So we could have live performances that we broadcast on our webpage.
Thank you.
I hope that we can, I definitely like the idea better, having that limited so that the parents can be there. Again, going through the programs with my child, there's nothing like being in that auditorium and listening to that music and watching there. So hopefully something can be figured out for that. Mrs. Busby, is there any public comment on this action item?
Not on the action item itself, no.
Okay, all right. Hearing none, Mr. Chambers, roll call.
Mr. Ross?
Aye.
Mr. Hilbert?
Aye.
Ms. Parkhurst?
Aye.
Ms. Pavlik?
Aye.
Thank you.
At this time, ask for public participation. Community members wishing to address the board are asked to abide by the following guidelines. Attendees shall register their intention to participate in the public portion of the meeting upon their arrival at the meeting. After those that have registered have spoken, if time allows, the board president will ask for public participation from all other attendees. Please state your name, address, and affiliation. Please keep comments to a maximum of 3 minutes. No participant may speak more than once on the same topic unless all others who wish to speak on that topic have been heard. All statements shall be directed to the presiding officer. No person may address or question board members individually. And it appears we do have a,
There are a couple comments here.
Okay.
First one is Jessica Miller, and the question is, can you further address what you're doing once there is a case in regards to sanitation? We are constantly sanitizing our facilities, so that's happening on a daily basis in terms of cleaning countertops, wiping doorknobs. I can tell you from personal experience in visiting the buildings that our custodial staff has been very diligent in getting around and cleaning things like doorknobs and railings in the buildings, and that regular sanitation is happening. In addition, as I mentioned earlier, we do have our electrostatic foggers, which we utilize in the evenings. Those are one of our best tools. And at this time, it's probably a good time to thank the commissioners. I think this might be on our next regular meeting, but you may have seen in the paper that they did reach out to superintendents in the county and offer us some of their CARE Act money. And we all agreed as a county that those sanitizers would be the best thing for us. So the evening misting, the weekend fogging of the facilities is happening on a regular basis in terms of keeping facilities clean. The second question that has come up, and this is from Dana Raklovitz, something similar with Lindsay Meyer, and that is concern over backpacks and the weight of backpacks, especially at the middle school, that the children are having to carry at a time when they don't have access to lockers. Again, that's a county-wide concern that actually came up at my Akron area superintendent's meeting last week. So we're not the only ones dealing with that. Pretty much everybody is. We are going to need to make some adjustments as we head into the winter months. We are aware of that. We're reviewing our facilities in order to determine what kind of room there actually is in a classroom or a homeroom to be able to store some of those kinds of things. In addition, we've also had conversation about what protocol would be if we allowed locker usage again, because it wouldn't be able to be just like it was in the past, because we want to limit the kids grouping together within the hallways.
is that all then for questions, public participation?
I do have someone on here, Jackie, that her mic is muted.
Okay.
I don't have control over her mic.
Oh,
So I'm just letting you know. Hopefully,
Oh.
if she hears it, she'll unmute and
okay.
ask her question.
So Jackie, if you can hear us, go ahead and unmute your microphone. Yes, okay. Okay, at this time, I'll make a motion to move to executive session to consider the employment, discipline, compensation of a public employee or official. Included in the executive session is Mr. Sable, Mr. Chambers, Mr. Shields, and is Dr. Okay. There will be no action taken. Oh,
Jackie, did you have something you wanted to say? Nope. She unmuted her mic and then disappeared, so
okay.
it was close.
No, I did not say appointment. Okay.
It almost worked.
Or compensation of a public employee or official. So I need a second.
Second?
Mr. Chambers?
Ms. Pavlik,
Aye.
Mr. Ross,
Aye.
Mr. Hilberg.
Aye.
Ms. Parkers.
Aye.
Thank you.
And there will be no action taken after, when we leave executive session.